Coming up on The World Today.
India exhibits military might at Grand Republic Day parade in New Delhi. And Monterey Park residents call for stricter gun control following deadly mass shooting. Well, earlier today, witnesses and medics have reported that Israeli commandos killed 9 Palestinians, including an elderly woman, and wounded 12 others during clashes with gunmen in a flashpoint town in the occupied West Bank today. The Israeli military said it sent special forces into Jenin to detain members of the Islamic Jihad armed group suspected of having carried out and planning multiple major terror attacks, shooting several of them after they opened fire. Islamic Jihad confirmed battling the Israeli forces as they carried out the unusually deep raid into Jenin's refugee camp. A militant bastion, another Islamist group, Hamas, said its men also took part in the fighting. The death toll, the highest in Jenin in years, drew a warning from Islamic Jihad that its truce with Israel, called after a brief exchange of fire across the Gaza Strip border last year, could be in danger.
Today, as we gather to celebrate the next chapter in the success story of our great and diverse society, let us all recognise the unique privilege that we have to share this continent with the world's oldest continuous culture. This is the promise of Australia. Their story is ours. And today, a new chapter begins. For all of you receiving your Australian citizenship, and for all of us, for all Australians who welcome you with open arms and an open heart, I say this: congratulations. Happy Australia Day. Welcome home.
While thousands of Australians mark the country's National Day with rallies in support of Indigenous people, many of whom describe the anniversary of the day the British fleet sailed into Sydney Harbour as Invasion Day. In Sydney, the capital of New South Wales, Australia's most populous state, large crowds gathered at an Invasion Day rally in the central business district, where some people carried Aboriginal flags and an Indigenous smoking ceremony took place.
This whole march is to not support the voice to Parliament. We need something stronger than that. We are the voice. Us as Aboriginal people are the voice. We don't need the government telling us that.
It's not a celebration for everyone when First Nations people have been this is the commencement of the day that they started the rape and genocide of their people.
Nobody's got the right to celebrate genocide. That's it. This is ground zero, genocide. Ground zero happened here on 26th of January, 1788. Nobody should be celebrating. It's not an event to celebrate.
I think it's really important that we come out and protest today and show support in any way we can for Indigenous Australians. It's actually the 85th day of mourning this year, so our Indigenous Australians have been protesting this for 85 years. It's not really televised, but it's been going on for so long. So, yeah, I think it's important that we show up and we mourn with them and, yeah, stand in solidarity, I guess.
Or elsewhere, India is celebrating its 74th Republic Day today with a colourful parade displaying military might and cultural diversity. The public holiday marks the anniversary of India officially adopting its constitution, making it a sovereign republic. Its highlight is a parade which is held in the capital city, Delhi, and telecast live across the country. Every year, the country also invites a foreign dignitary as the chief guest to the parade. This year, Egypt's President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi was the guest of honor. Well, to talk more about this, political science, University of Delhi Professor Tanveer Ijaz joins me now on the occasion. Welcome to the program and happy celebrations. How different is this day from India's Independence Day?
Independence Day is celebrated on August 15, and we got independent from British Empire on 15th August 1947. The Indian Independence Act was passed by the British Parliament and gave the Assembly the power, legal status of Dominion Parliament and constituent body. Today we are celebrating Republic Day. So this day we gave to ourselves the Constitution of India. We actually it was on 26th November 1949 where the Constituent Assembly adopted and enacted the Constitution. But the Constitution was given into effect from 1950, 26 January. So that's the importance, of the Republic Day. We became free from, we severed the last ties from the British Empire. Which meant that there's no monarchy. We are free, a country. We are taking the responsibility to govern ourselves, to look after the welfare of the people, of the entire population of the country. So that's the relevance of Republic Day. One more thing I would like to add about the relevance of Republic Day is that on 26th January 1930. The Indian National Congress, which was spearheading the freedom struggle against the colonial power. On that day, we declared Purn Swaraj, which meant complete independence. So it was 1930 that we marked the slogan of Purn Swaraj, that is complete independence, and then we changed our vocabulary from sort of a charity to justice. We demanded justice, that we want to be free. And you see that today India is standing tall in the international arena.
And we understand that an all-women contingent of Central Reserve Police Force was one of the highlights of this year's parade. How else are people celebrating the day?
Yeah, I mean, in Delhi, most of the people, they go to the Kartav Path, which in English it can be translated as duty road. So people go there to see India's diversity, India's strengths, India's complex federalism. Different states, they showcase their specificity. So India is a multicultural, pluricultural society where you find different kinds of cultures, food habits, dresses, styles. So it's a hugely diverse country with huge sort of different kinds of cultures. So it's very interesting. But normally, since it's a holiday today, so children are happy. They fly kites, and today, in fact, most of the people are thronging to see a new movie, which has been released yesterday. Yeah, so it's a happy day. We are celebrating, and of course also at the same time trying to remember trying to remember the Constitution of India that is there with all of us, which tells us that we are a free nation now. Yeah.
All right. Perhaps finally, before we let you go, what's your take on India's achievement 74 years ago till this moment, and what do you see for the future, very briefly?
Oh, yeah. So I see, India is moving forward, right? India is moving forward. India is trying very hard to towards becoming a developed nation. Coming into a high-income bracket in 2047, India has the capacity. India has the capacity to take on the challenges which are there, because it's a diverse country and complexities are there, diverse challenges are there, but nonetheless, India is trying very hard. India is working very hard in terms of coping up all the challenges and moving forward to become a developed nation. As by 2047, that's what the aspirations of all Indians are.
All right. Professor Tanvir Aijas is the political science professor of political science, University of Delhi. Thank you so much for joining us, and happy celebrations.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. We head to the US now, where some 200 people gathered outside the Monterey Park dance studio last night for candlelight vigil to honor the victims of a shooting at the weekend that left 11 people dead. The Saturday night shooting in Monterey Park, a hub of the Asian American community just east of downtown Los Angeles, came just days before another California shooting, which killed 11 on Monday. Investigators collected 42 bullet casings from the scene of the shooting, one of California's bloodiest mass shootings.
The Black community with other minorities to end the exclusion.
Yeah, well, this is my community. Like he shared with you, I grew up here, and I mean, it's tragic, and I guess I'm, like, they were saying, I'm trying to process my feelings as a community, and I guess this felt like the best way to do it.
Just to show support and to show the love and care of the community.
I live about 2 miles from here, so it's pretty close to home. And the other dance studio that the shooter had gone to afterwards is just about a 10-minute walk from my house. So it was very close to home, and just very sad and shocking.
It's a tragedy that should not be happening. And to think that it happened again the next day. But the reason to come is to show respect and also to be together with other people.
Meanwhile, some of the residents there are calling for stricter gun control following the deadly mass shooting. Pinky Chen knew one of the victims, who was a former student at the dance center who also helped manage the studio. And Chen said that another of her close friends is recovering in hospital after being shot.
I, like many in the community, we're just in disbelief, and just, I know I'm just feeling very numb that something like this.
He told me in our brief conversation, he was on the dance floor with his students, and another one, very unfortunate, she said on the corner, and then got shot and died.
I know here in California we have one of the strictest gun control legislation, but yet here we are again, another mass shooting, and so something has to be done. We need to stop the violence.
Well, following the mass shootings with California at the scene of recent horror, a chilling new report from the U.S. Secret Service shed some light on this tragic American phenomenon. The report found that half of the country's mass attacks from 2016 to 2020 were sparked by personal, domestic or workplace disputes. But joining me now to talk more about this is a psychiatrist in Houston, Texas, Dr. Somto Obi. He's also founder of Melanin Doctors. Thanks for joining me on the program. What's your take on the whole shooting and the recurrence that we're seeing happen across the United States?
Yes, thank you guys for having me. But like you were saying, this is a very sad event, a very common event that keeps occurring in America. One of the things that we're seeing, at least in our field, is, especially with the pandemic, is isolation, some of these traumas that are going on in certain communities, and having a history of violence are major triggers and major predisposing factors that are leading to this. Also, some of the, easy access to weapons is also causing major gun violence and major incidents similar to this.
Are you surprised by the recent reports saying that half of the mass attacks so far, 2016, 2020, were sparked by personal, domestic, workplace disputes? One really wonders why.
Yeah, I am somewhat surprised with that. So, like I was saying earlier, the biggest factor is a history of violence. So, anybody that's having a dispute and has a history of violence, there can be a spark that will cause them to be aggressive, use a weapon. However, I think one of the reasons why is also having that ease of access. Instead of in the past things will altercate to physical fights, now they're escalating to using weapons.
What's your take on perhaps the history of mental issues, other factors which we understand from this report were things like financial insecurity, engaging in domestic violence, which you have alluded to. But what really brings out this bad side in someone?
Yeah, thanks for the question. And we've seen, at least as being a healthcare provider, being a doctor, being a psychiatrist, we see that that mental health can be a predisposing factor. However, mental health issues as well as a history of violence can be the major predisposing factor to causing somebody to do a mass shooting. At least for mental health, we see that a lot of our patients aren't aggressive, agitated, and doing these acts of displays of mass shootings. But if we're seeing somebody that has a history of psychotic disorder, aggression, violence, these are people we want to divert to the jail system and not only treat their psychiatric illness, but treat their antisocial and aggressive behaviors.
Indeed, very important factors there. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Dr. Somtobi, for joining us on the program.
No problem. Thank you for having me, guys.
Well, European Union migration ministers are meeting in Stockholm today to discuss visa restrictions and better coordination inside the bloc to be able to send more people with no right to asylum in Europe back to their home countries, including Iraq. 3 years after the 27-nation EU agreed to restrict visas for countries deemed failing to cooperate in taking their people back, only Gambia has been formally punished. The EU's Executive European Commission proposed similar steps vis-à-vis Iraq, Senegal and Bangladesh, though 2 EU officials said cooperation with Dakar on returning people has since improved.
We have a serious situation when it comes to migration in Europe. We see increased irregular arrivals. And during the Home Affairs part of the meeting, we will focus on the external dimension and, in particular, on the issue of returns. Returning those who have been denied asylum in Europe is a really important issue, and I think that the Europe could do better. So I look forward to the discussion on this.
We also have an acute situation where we have a huge increase of irregular arrivals of migrants. But even though we have around 300,000 irregular arrivals last year, but we had last year almost 1 million asylum applications, 924,000 asylum applications in the European Union. And that means that we have 3 times more asylum applications than irregular arrivals. And these are overloading the reception capacities. And many of those are not in need of international protection. That's why I very much welcome that the Swedish presidency now will focus on returns. We have a very low return rate, and I can see that we can do significant progress here to increase the numbers of returns and have it more effective and quicker. So I think this is one of the most important things that we need to strengthen, and we do not need to wait for the legislation on the pact to be able to do that.
And ahead of Czech elections, retired general and former NATO official Peter Pavel leads billionaire former Prime Minister Andrej Babis by nearly 18-point margin ahead of this week's presidential runoff. That's according to final Ipsos agency poll. Pavel's polling at 58.8% to 41.2% for Babis in the survey conducted over the weekend and published Monday. The 2 candidates meet in the second round of election tomorrow and on Saturday.
Babiš is a very pragmatic politician, so I don't think he would go as far as Orbán or Kaczynski, because he has interests also in Western Europe, business interests, and he does not want to threaten those interests too much. So we would probably hear some anti-European rhetoric on his part, but he would never go too far, because obviously he would threaten his business interests in Germany and the Netherlands and other. Well, Babiš is not certainly an ideologically motivated politician such as Jaroslav Kaczynski. He is not religious, and so I think that if we talk about Poland, he could be inspired more by the attacks on the Constitution or Constitutional Court and so on. In the past, we have seen, we have heard his statements on the Constitutional Court or on the upper chamber of the Parliament, the Senate. He's very hostile towards both of those institutions, clearly, and we have seen it in the past. He has been inspired by Orbán to some extent. So he could try to use his influence maybe to undercut the independence of the media. We have seen Miloš Zeman was trying to do the same thing on some levels, and he would probably also use Orbán as an inspiration in possible attacks on the Constitutional Court or the Senate and some other democratic institutions.
Now that is the moment a bus in Turkey carrying 7 passengers plunged into a reservoir after the driver lost steering control yesterday. The municipality bus in the eastern Turkish city of Malatya was boarding a ferry to cross the dam lake when the accident occurred. CCTV footage from inside the bus showed the moment of panic for the bus driver and passengers as water flooded into the vehicle after it had fallen. The local governor said there were no fatalities as a result of the incident. 3 passengers had been hospitalized with non-life-threatening conditions. Thank goodness they're okay. Well, let's head to Ethiopia, where Denmark's climate minister visited the Afar region, a drought-stricken area where aid can now be delivered after a peace agreement was signed in November. The conflict in Ethiopia, which broke out November 2020 over disagreement between the Addis Ababa government and Tigrayan authorities, created famine-like conditions for hundreds of thousands, killed tens of thousands, displaced millions across northern Ethiopia. Ethiopia's federal government and the Tigray People's Liberation Front, a guerrilla force turned political party that dominates the region, agreed to stop fighting following talks.
Especially developed countries have a huge responsibility. One, to reduce our CO2 emissions. This is what happens if we don't. I mean, climate change affects people. And this is not something that might happen in the future. This is happening right now. So the developed countries that has, historically speaking, been the cause of the problem needs to do more.
Conflict, as I've mentioned, have displaced hundreds of thousands of people. WFP have been providing the assistance to over 650,000 people, mainly IDPs that have been displaced due to the conflict in the Zone 4 and 2 of the Afar regions, but also to the host populations.
The U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, Ms. Janet Yellen, is in South Africa on a working visit. Ms. Yellen today addressed the media with South Africa's Minister of Finance, Mr. Enoch Godongwana, ahead of bilateral talks. Areas of cooperation, mutual benefit between the two economies are on the agenda, which also includes talks on progress with South Africa's energy transition. Ms. Yellen's Africa tour, which began in Senegal, is set to be a follow-up from the U.S.-African Leaders Summit in December, where President Joe Biden made commitments to support African economies.
As you know, South Africa is the first country with a a Just Energy Transition Partnership, or JETP, to which the United States was proud to commit as a partner. This partnership represents South Africa's bold first step toward expanding electricity access and reliability and creating a low-carbon and climate-resilient economy, a move that I believe will alleviate the deep fiscal strain the energy sector is putting on South Africa's economy and support strong economic growth. The partnership will also invest in the jobs of growing industries so that the transition is just and does not leave anyone behind. I've appreciated the Minister's cooperation and insightful views in our talks so far.
I'm equally pleased by the announcements that you made yesterday that the USA Secretary and South Africa's National Treasurer are committing to form a joint task force on combating financing of wildlife trafficking. I believe that Ms. Yellen and I will have fruitful discussion today on a number of issues, including anti-money laundering and countering financing of terrorism, climate financing, sovereign debt resolution in Africa, and other global issues which are going to be part of the G20 next month.
Prince of Wales playfully teased Kate Middleton for nattering too much as they packed parcels for struggling families at a food bank in Windsor today. Prince William, 40, his wife, 41, visited Windsor Food Share this morning to hear how the organisation provides for individuals and families.
I think it took knowing when was the right time to...
Absolutely. So last year we fed like 7,281 people, whereas the year before we fed just over 6,000, which was a massive increase. Already this year we've seen nearly 100 people increase over just 3 weeks. So I imagine it's going to be sky high this year. I dread to think what our numbers are going to be like this year. So daunting. Imagine having to go somewhere and say to them, I can't afford food to feed my family. We would all feel terrible having to do that, but for some it's the only choice they have. You know, we haven't all got family we can ask for help, and we haven't got savings and that kind of thing, so they are needing to ask for help.
So their presence counts for a lot. Well, finally on the programme, the city of Vilnius, Lithuania's capital, celebrated its 700th anniversary Wednesday with a light festival that featured a Ukrainian flag video projection on a cathedral wall, live music performances and laser installations. One of the main installations, called the Message of Freedom, was a laser beam that shone 10,000 meters and was intended as a show of support for fighters in Ukraine. Vilnius's mayor said Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, whose birthday also falls on January 25, had commended the city on the occasion.
We started this light festival to celebrate our Vilnius birthday, but of course 700 years, it's especially big and nice. This year topic is a kind of a little bit futuristic topic, but it also has some relation with the freedom fighters in Ukraine. And as I mentioned, this installation, which goes 10 kilometers up, it's called the Message of Freedom. And of course, for those people who are around it, you can see it from quite a distance. And of course, it's also one of the signs of support to Ukraine. I talk a lot to our Ukrainian colleagues, to mayors and others, and all the time when they come to here, they say, please don't forget to celebrate, because we also want to celebrate. We are fighting for freedom, and freedom brings good life and joy as well. So the fact that we are celebrating right today, it's also the fact that freedom prevails. And actually, Volodymyr Zelensky is celebrating his birthday on exactly the same date. And I'm very grateful that yesterday he awarded Vilnius with a great honor, saying that the Vilnius is the city of savers, savers of Ukrainians. And it also congratulated Vilnius on this occasion.
And many braved the cold temperatures to attend the light shows. Well, that's our program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Bye for now.